Have you ever felt like you're always available for everyone, but no one is truly there for you? Do you constantly say yes when you want to say no, just to keep the peace, avoid rejection, or not be seen as selfish? If that hits home, then this video might just change your life. In today's world, being emotionally available is often praised, but what if I told you that always being available is destroying your peace, draining your energy, and making you invisible to the people around you? This video dives deep into the hidden cost of emotional availability, revealing how your kindness may be used against you and how choosing silence, solitude, and conscious unavailability could be your most powerful form of self-respect. We'll explore Carl Jung's teachings on individuation and psychic energy, uncover why people manipulate your reactions, and explain how setting boundaries without guilt leads to true freedom. By the end of this video, you'll learn how to stop explaining yourself, protect your energy, and rediscover your self-worth without the need for approval. If you've ever felt tired of giving too much, watch until the end, because the real transformation begins not when others understand you, but when you choose to understand yourself. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest content. Maybe it's finally time to untangle yourself from the invisible ropes that have held you hostage for far too long, to step back, to disappear a little, to let the mystery of your silence echo louder than your words ever did. Because the moment you stop being constantly available, the moment you pull your energy back, everything begins to shift. The air changes, people take notice, and the ones who truly cared, they lean in closer. The rest, they drift away, revealing the truth you were too kind or too afraid to see before. You were raised in a world that taught you to perform emotional labor for free, to show up, smile, and say yes when every part of you wanted to scream no. Since childhood, many of us were conditioned to tie our worth to our willingness to be the helper, the fixer, the rescuer, the one who always answered the phone, even when our soul was crying for rest. We were groomed into emotional servitude, under the illusion that goodness meant being endlessly accessible. But let me say this with love and urgency. That kind of availability is not generosity. It is emotional captivity. It is a gilded cage where the bars are made of guilt, and the key is held by your fear of disappointing others. You are not selfish for needing space. You are not cruel for saying no. You are reclaiming what is sacred: your peace, your presence, your energy. Because here's a brutal truth. Most people will never say out loud, if you make yourself emotionally available at all times, you will be drained, used, and discarded the very moment you stop being useful. And why does this happen? Because predictability is not respected. It is exploited. The more predictable you are, the easier it is for others to manipulate you. People don't see you, they see a role you've played so well that you've become a button they push when they want comfort, validation, or attention. And once they get what they need, they retreat until the next time they're in need. And it's heartbreaking, isn't it? Because deep down, you were just trying to love, to be kind, to matter. But in that desperate hope that someone would finally see your value, you ended up betraying yourself again and again. You see, there's an illusion many of us are trapped in, that if we are always present for others, someone will finally be present for us. But life doesn't work that way. Presence given out of fear or obligation does not invite presence in return. It invites dependence, entitlement, and resentment. Carl Jung once spoke about the persona, the mask we wear to gain approval, to feel safe, to be accepted in a world that often punishes authenticity. And it is precisely this mask that convinces you to keep saying, "I'm fine," when you are slowly breaking. It tells you to smile when your heart is shattered. It demands that you reply instantly to every message, return every call, and explain every absence as though your soul owes rent to everyone who has access to you. But let me tell you something I've learned the hard way. The more you center your life around meeting other people's expectations, the more you vanish from your own life. You become a shadow in your own story, a footnote in the script of others. Constant availability is not love. It's self-erasure. It is a silent cry for approval, wrapped in the costume of kindness. But what it is fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear that if you stop being useful, you'll stop being loved. But the love that depends on your utility is not love, it's a transaction. And transactions will drain you. Over time, you'll feel it in your bones, your spirit slowly unraveling. Your joy will fade. Your sleep will suffer. Your mind will buzz with everyone else's noise, while your voice becomes a whisper you barely recognize. That's the cost of being everything to everyone. You end up being nothing to yourself. People who demand your constant presence do not love you. They love the version of you that benefits them. The moment you stop performing that role, they will question your character and label you as distant, selfish, and cold. But it's not that you've become cruel, it's that you've finally stopped being convenient. And here's the most painful irony of all. The more present you are, the more people take you for granted. Because what is always available becomes emotionally disposable. Like a light that's always on, people stop noticing its warmth until the room goes dark. No one treasures what they believe will never leave. So I invite you to pause, to breathe, to ask yourself, who truly deserves access to your soul? Who has earned your time, your energy, and your loyalty? And more importantly, who deserves your absence? That's a hard question, I know, because it forces us to confront the deeper wound. Why do we give ourselves away so easily? Why do we feel the need to explain, defend, and respond when our silence should be enough? The answer lies in what Jung called psychic energy, the vital life force within you. Your thoughts, your reactions, your emotions, your time, they are all forms of currency. You spend them every day, whether you realize it or not. The question is, are you investing wisely, or are you bleeding energy into black holes? Every time you answer a text out of guilt, you spend energy. Every time you defend yourself against baseless accusations, you lose peace. Every time you react impulsively to provocation, you feed the drama instead of preserving your center. And Jung was right. That which you resist persists. The more you react, the more entangled you become. It's like pouring water on a flame that feeds on a tension. The more you try to put it out, the brighter it burns. But you don't have to keep burning. You can choose something different. You can choose silence over explanation, boundaries over guilt, distance over dysfunction. You can step away from the emotional stage and return to your own sacred space. Your energy is sacred. Your peace is priceless. And if you don't learn how to protect them, someone else will gladly use them to build their comfort at the expense of your well-being. So maybe it's time to stop apologizing for needing space. Time to stop explaining your silence. Time to stop justifying your healing. Maybe it's time to reclaim your life, not with a loud announcement, but with a quiet, unapologetic presence. Let them call you distant. Let them call you cold. Let them miss the version of you that was always available. Because the real you, the healed you, the whole you, that version isn't here to please. That version is here to live. People who walk through life emotionally drained are not weak. They are not broken. They are not fragile in the way the world assumes. No, what they are is misdirected, misguided by a lifetime of conditioning that taught them to give without boundaries, to love without limits, and to serve without pause. They carry the silent burden of everyone else's expectations, while their own needs are left to wither in the shadows. And do you know what happens to a soul that lives in constant exhaustion? It cracks, quietly, invisibly. And in those cracks, Vulnerability seeps in not the beautiful kind that fosters intimacy, but the dangerous kind that leaves you exposed to those who know exactly how to take advantage of your kindness. Because manipulators, opportunists, and emotionally parasitic people, they sense it. They smell emotional exhaustion the way sharks smell blood in the water. They notice when you can't say no, when you answer every message, every call, every unspoken expectation, when you're always trying to fix what is not yours to fix. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. They watch how quickly you react. How often do you blame yourself? How eager you are to save everyone but yourself. And they move in, not with aggression, but with subtlety, with flattery, with needs. And before you even realize it, you're their emotional lifeline, their sponge, their healer, their everything. Carl Jung spoke of this so clearly. He said, a healthy psyche knows how to retain energy within the system. It's not about closing yourself off from the world. It's about not giving yourself away so easily. It's about learning how to say no with dignity, how to stay silent without shame, how to observe without the need to instantly react. Because let's be honest, true power doesn't scream. It doesn't scramble to fix or rush to please. True power chooses. It moves with intention. It pauses before acting. And that kind of power only comes when you've done the inner work to know yourself, to recognize the difference between a wound and a responsibility, between compassion and self-sacrifice. Ask yourself, how many sleepless nights have you spent trying to resolve a conversation that someone else let go of days ago? How many times have you obsessed over what you should have said, or desperately tried to make sense of why someone treated you so poorly, like your pain had to be justified to be real? That is psychic energy being drained without return. That is your life force leaking into places where there is no nourishment, only repetition. You're keeping alive ghosts that should have been laid to rest. You're fueling relationships and dynamics that only survive because you keep showing up to resuscitate them. Your energy, your psychic force, isn't just an invisible current. It's your presence. It's the very thing that fills a room before you speak. When well guarded, this energy commands respect, creates impact, and builds boundaries without needing to explain them. But when poorly managed, it turns you into a shell, reactive, unsure, drained. And let me be honest, this world is not gentle with the emotionally exposed. It will devour you if you don't learn how to protect yourself. So begin to observe, not others, yourself. Watch what triggers you. What makes you immediately jump into explanation, defense, or apology? What words or behaviors cause you to lose your center? Those moments? That's where your energy is leaking. That's where you need to do the real work. Not to become cold, not to build walls, but to become sovereign, to own your energy, your reactions, your space. And now we enter a darker, more uncomfortable territory. Jung spoke of something that most people avoid because it's too confronting: silent manipulation. The kind that doesn't scream or demand, but seduces through guilt and emotional debt. When you begin to guard your energy, when you stop giving instant access to your emotions, something fascinating happens. The projections people place on you start to break. This was one of Jung's greatest revelations. When you conserve your energy, you dissolve the illusion others have projected onto you. And trust me, this deeply unsettles people, because many relationships are not based on you, but on the version of you that others need you to be. Think about that friend who only calls when they're drowning, that romantic partner who praises you, but only when you're bending over backward to fix their chaos, that colleague who values you as long as you're agreeable and convenient. They're not connecting to your essence. They're relating to the role you've unknowingly agreed to play. And why did you agree? Because, like so many of us, you were afraid of being disliked, abandoned, unloved. And here lies the most insidious truth of manipulation. It doesn't always come in the form of domination or control. Often, it arrives in the form of guilt, a guilt that whispers, "You owe them. You need to be there. You need to fix it." Even when it costs you your peace. The manipulator doesn't need to control you directly. They just need you to keep reacting the same way, because your reactions are the chain. But when do you stop reacting? When you break the pattern and choose silence over explanation. When you walk away instead of engaging, the projection shatters, and the mask they placed on you falls. Now, they feel exposed, because the game is no longer working, because you're no longer feeding their illusion. And here's the kicker, not everyone wants to see themselves. That's why your boundaries bother them. That's why your absence triggers them more than your presence ever did. Your unavailability becomes a mirror, a confrontation, a reminder of their own emptiness. And that silence, that absence, it is deafening for those who've depended on your emotional labor to keep their chaos at bay. So what do? They attack. They criticize. They accuse you of being distant, selfish, and unkind. Not because you are, but because you stopped playing your part. You stopped serving as a mirror to reflect the image they carefully constructed. Now they are forced to sit with their discomfort. And that is a pain many will run from at any cost. But you are not running anymore. You are learning to stand still in your truth. You are learning that not every fire requires your water. Not every storm deserves your shelter. You are beginning to realize that your energy is sacred, that it is not your job to be everything for everyone. Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And maybe that's where you are now, not imagining peace, but walking through the shadows, making peace with the fact that healing often means becoming unavailable. Protecting your energy sometimes means disappointing others. Walking away may look like a loss to the world, but to your soul, it's a return. So breathe deeply. Stay grounded. Don't explain. Don't react. Observe. Choose. Conserve, because your energy is not for sale. Not anymore. When you finally withdraw, when you no longer respond, explain, no longer pour your energy into the same draining cycle, you'll witness something extraordinary. The mask of the other begins to slip. Their shadow, once hidden by your constant attention and emotional labor, starts to rise. And this is unbearable for those who have always used you as their escape hatch from facing themselves. But let's pause for a moment. Let's not talk about them. Let's talk about you. Are you truly ready to be misunderstood? Are you ready to be called selfish, cold, and distant by those who only ever knew how to love the version of you that bled itself dry? Are you strong enough to hold your silence when the guilt creeps in, when the loneliness roars, when the world demands an answer you no longer owe? Because this is where your soul is tested. This is where the real work begins. And it is in that silence, that raw, echoing stillness after the rupture, that something new begins to bloom. A new kind of power, one that doesn't roar, one that doesn't chase, one that doesn't need applause to exist. That's what we'll step into now. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Let's talk about silence. Not the shallow kind that comes from retreating in defeat, but the kind that holds a presence. The kind of silence that doesn't cower, it commands. That doesn't shrink, it expands. That doesn't beg to be understood, but instead becomes a mirror that reveals everything the world tried to hide. The modern world is deafening. It idolizes noise. Everyone wants to speak, to be right, to win, to be validated. People argue to feel powerful. They talk over each other just to fill the void, terrified of what that silence might reveal if they ever sat with it long enough. But silence, true silence, it is not absence. It is awareness. It is the sacred ground where your soul begins to rebuild after years of being stretched too thin. Jung understood this deeply. To him, silence was not a vacuum to be filled. It was a sacred womb where inner transformation takes root. In silence, the truth isn't shouted, it emerges. Slowly, steadily, powerfully. When you stop reacting, when you stop engaging in every emotional tug of war, your vision clears. You begin to see the patterns, the manipulations, the loops you kept walking in because you were too exhausted to notice. The way you've been conditioned to overfunction, to fix, to hold space for everyone but yourself. That silence gives birth to lucidity. And lucidity, that scares people. Because people who try to control you, who need you reactive, can't handle your clarity. They panic. They unravel. They accuse. Have you noticed it? That strange panic when you stop replying immediately. When do you stop explaining yourself? When you just go quiet. It's not love they miss. It's control, because silence breaks their script. Your absence erases the role they cast you in. While you spoke, you were still playing the game. But when you choose not to respond, not to chase, not to defend, you flip the board. And suddenly, they have no power. That's why they lash out. That's why they scramble to provoke. But let me tell you something that changed my life. Silence is not a weakness. It is mastery. It is knowing that you no longer need to prove your worth through noise. It is the sacred discipline of choosing your battles not from fear, but from wisdom. Real silence is the art of self-possession. It is not being dragged by another's chaos. It is knowing that your peace is more precious than any temporary victory in an argument. Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming fully yourself. And that process requires space, solitude, silence. Not to isolate yourself in sadness, but to finally hear yourself again after a lifetime of being drowned out by the needs and noise of others. But make no mistake, silence has a cost. It will cost you shallow relationships. It will strip away people who only loved you when you were easy, compliant, and endlessly available. It will make you look strange, too intense, even arrogant to those who are only ever attached to your utility, not your truth. You will lose people, but you will find yourself. And here's something no one tells you. The more you grow, the more selective you become, not out of pride, but out of necessity. Every word you speak becomes a spiritual investment. Every response becomes an energy exchange. Not everyone deserves your explanation. Not everyone has earned your vulnerability. Sometimes, silence is not a retreat, it is your sovereignty. It is the language of people who have stopped trying to earn love through performance. People who have nothing to prove because they finally know who they are. Silence is uncomfortable, yes, but not for the reason you think. It's uncomfortable because it forces the other to deal with themselves. It robs them of distraction. It confronts them with their unresolved noise. And in that stillness, they are faced with a mirror they've avoided all their lives. This is why people attack you when you choose silence. This is why they panic, criticize, and provoke, because you've disrupted their emotional addiction to your reaction. But let's get even deeper. The most powerful silence is not the one that unsettles them. It's the one that reconstructs you. It's the silence that finally detaches you from needing to be liked. It unhooks you from the compulsion to be understood by people who have no interest in knowing your soul. It reconnects you to God, to your rhythm, to your truth. This silence is where your vital energy is restored. It's where your nervous system exhales after years of overdrive. It's where your essence begins to come home after being scattered across everyone else's storylines. And this is what we'll explore next. Because cutting out external noise is only half the journey. The real freedom begins when you reclaim authority over where your energy goes. Who gets access? Who doesn't? What kind of love you will allow? And what kind of emotional hunger you will never feed again? It's time to become radically selective, not just with your time or your words, but with your soul. Because not everyone is worthy of your energy. And not everyone deserves the you that you fought so hard to find. So guard your silence, because in that silence, your truest self is waiting to speak not to the world, but finally, to you. It means nothing, absolutely nothing, to understand all of this intellectually if you still live your life on autopilot. If, deep down, you know your worth but continue saying yes when your entire body screams no. If you keep replying to messages that drain you, entertaining conversations that hollow you out, staying in relationships that have long since become nothing more than emotional habit, let's be honest. Awareness without action is just another lie you tell yourself. Another mask you wear, another form of self-deception wrapped in spiritual language. Because true transformation, real, raw, irreversible change begins not when you understand, but when you decide. When you decide, once and for all, to become selective with your time, your energy, your presence. And that decision, it demands emotional discipline. Not the kind that shouts or fights, but the kind that stands silently, firmly, unshakably. Conscious unavailability is not about being cold. It's not arrogance. It's not indifference. It is something much deeper, something sacred. It is reclaiming authorship over your own life. It is saying that I will no longer be on call to a world that only values me when I am useful, available, or convenient. And it starts small, always small. It's the pause before responding, the breath before reacting, the gentle act of putting your phone on silent and not feeling guilty about it. It's walking away from a conversation that's turning toxic. It's saying, not today, or I'm not interested, or I will not get involved in this emotional chaos. And most importantly, it's the revolutionary act of saying nothing at all, when once you would have bent over backward to explain, defend, and justify. Because the truth is, you owe no one an explanation for protecting your peace. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment on number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. This, for many, is unforgivable. Because when you stop explaining your absence, you take away their ability to manipulate you with guilt. You remove their power to keep you entangled in their narrative, where you were always the understanding one, the available one, the good one. But what they meant was the controllable one. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He taught that individuation, the process of becoming fully yourself, requires isolation, but not a sad, depressive isolation. No, a sacred one, a retreat from noise, a necessary pulling back so that, for the first time in your life, you can hear your voice without the distortion of others' expectations. Want to know a powerful test of your evolution? Watch carefully. Who pulls away when you become quiet? Who feels the need to provoke when you stop reacting? Who accuses you of changing when you finally start saying no? These are not signs of failure. These are proof that you've stopped playing the role that kept others comfortable. At first, conscious unavailability will feel brutal. It will ache. You'll second-guess yourself. You'll feel selfish. People will tell you you've become distant. They'll say you've changed, as if that's a crime. And maybe for a moment you'll believe them. But don't. This pain, it's part of your healing. You're dismantling years, decades of emotional programming. You've been trained to put yourself second, to be the bridge, the balm, the answer. Of course, it hurts to let that go. Of course, it feels unnatural to prioritize your peace. But hear this, every boundary you set is an act of self-respect. Every no is a yes to your soul. Every silence is a step back into your power. When you walk away from toxic environments, you're not abandoning people, you're choosing to protect what's sacred inside of you. And eventually, even those who once misunderstood you will begin to respect you because your absence taught them what your presence truly meant. But not everyone will celebrate your evolution. Your emotional distance will expose their wounds. Your silence will mirror their inner noise. And your refusal to play your old role will feel to them like betrayal. And then comes the rupture, the breaking point, the moment when the old connections dissolve. And with that, yes, comes pain. And yes, comes loneliness. You'll feel like you're losing something, but what you're doing is letting go of what was never truly yours to carry. And the question becomes, what comes next? What follows the distancing, the silence, the solitude? What is born in the stillness? That's what we must explore now. Because after the chaos fades, after the people fall away, after the noise subsides, there is a silence that wraps around you like a blanket. At first, it stings. It feels like abandonment. You'll wonder if you did the right thing. You'll miss the familiar rhythms, even if they were painful. But then something miraculous begins. That silence starts to soothe. It starts to cleanse the wounds you didn't know were still bleeding. It begins to speak, not with words, but with clarity. Clarity about who you are, what you want, and what you will never tolerate again. And then comes solitude. But not the kind of solitude that feels like lack. Not the kind that echoes with absence. This solitude is different. It is a deep, rooted presence yours. This is the solitude of the strong. The solitude of the one who no longer abandons themselves to be accepted. The one who no longer performs to be loved. And in that sacred space where chaos once lived, peace takes root, confidence grows, neediness dissolves. You are no longer aching to be seen because you have finally seen yourself. Jung said that to truly become yourself, you must walk away from the collective mask. You must step into sacred isolation. And that's what you're doing right now. You're not running from the world. You are returning to your center. And once you do, once you reclaim that space, you stop being a reactor. You become a creator. You're no longer shaped by every emotion, every text, every crisis around you. You begin shaping your reality from within. And the people who once depended on your dysfunction, they begin to disappear because the role you played, the one that fed their comfort, is gone. And in that, there is liberation. Yes, you will lose people. Yes, you will walk away from places that once felt like home. Yes, you will be misunderstood, but you will gain you. You will recover your essence, your truth, your voice. And when you are no longer available for everything, you become valuable. You become rare. You become respected. You become unforgettable. And not because you shouted to be heard, but because you chose to stand in your silence, and that silence spoke louder than words ever could. So now, take a deep breath and ask yourself, what resonated most deeply with you today? Was it the power of silence? The courage to say no? Or the strength it takes to walk away from roles that no longer serve your soul? Because here's the truth. Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's found in the stillness where you finally hear yourself again. You don't have to be available for everyone to be worthy. You don't have to explain your boundaries to be respected. And you don't have to stay in emotional patterns that drain the very life out of you. Now I'd love to hear from you. What's one thing you've learned from this video that you're ready to practice in your own life? Is it being more selective with your energy? Is it allowing yourself to be misunderstood in the name of peace? Drop it in the comments below. I read everyone, and your voice matters here. If you like this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps us continue creating content that speaks to the heart and empowers your journey.